The cargo freighter moved through the darkness of space like a metal whale swimming through an endless ocean. Captain Daniel Cross sat in his command chair, watching the stars slide past on the view screen. He had been doing this job for 7 years now, hauling supplies between Earth's colonies. It was boring work most days, but it paid well and kept him among the stars. Helen Price sat at the pilot station, her fingers dancing across the controls. She was the best pilot Daniel had ever worked with, able to squeeze extra speed out of the old freighter when they needed it. Behind them, Lucas Grant was somewhere in the engine room, probably talking to the machines like they were his children. Nina Torres, their medical officer, was in the small medical bay. Updating inventory records, the ship was called Horizon's Edge, and it had seen better days. The hull plating showed scars from micrometer impacts, and the paint had faded from years of exposure to cosmic radiation. But the engines were solid, and the life support never failed. That was all that mattered out here in the black. They were 3 days into a routine supply run to the mining colony on Kepler 442b. The cargo hold was full of equipment, food supplies and medical gear. Nothing exciting, nothing dangerous. Just another job in a long line of jobs that kept the colonies running. Helen suddenly sat up straight in her chair. Her hands moved quickly across her console, and a frown crossed her face. Daniel noticed immediately. After working together for 5 years, he could read her body language like a book. "What is it?" he asked, leaning forward. "Getting something weird on the communications array," Helen said, adjusting the frequency. "It's faint, but it's definitely a signal. Could be interference, but the pattern looks deliberate." Daniel stood and moved to her station. The screen showed a weak signal pulsing irregularly. It was coming from somewhere off their planned route, deeper into unexplored territory. "Can you clean it up?" Daniel asked. Helen worked the controls for several minutes, applying filters and boosting the gain. Slowly, the signal became clearer. It wasn't random interference. It was a distress call. The speakers crackled to life, and a voice came through, broken and desperate. The words were hard to make out at first, buried under layers of static. Helen recorded the signal and ran it through the computer. Letting the artificial intelligence clean up the audio, what they heard next made Daniel's blood run cold. "This is New Haven Colony. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Unknown hostiles. They came without warning. Requesting immediate assistance. We have casualties. Multiple casualties. They're breaking through the defensive perimeter." The voice paused, and they could hear weapons fire in the background, screams, the sound of something exploding. "They're taking people. Loading them onto ships. Please, anyone receiving this, we need help. They're taking the children. Please, anyone, help us." The transmission dissolved into static again, then cut out completely. Daniel and Helen stared at each other in shocked silence. Nina had appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. Her face was pale. "Play it again," Daniel said quietly. Helen replayed the message. This time, Daniel listened carefully, trying to pull every detail from the broken transmission. He heard the panic in the speaker's voice, the genuine terror. This wasn't a drill or a mistake. Something terrible was happening. "Computer, locate the source of that transmission," Daniel ordered. The ship's navigation system calculated the origin point and displayed it on the main screen. The signal was coming from coordinates about 4 days away at maximum speed. The computer identified the location as New Haven, a small research outpost that had been established 3 years ago. Population, 800 people. "I know that colony," Nina said softly. "They specialize in xenobiology research. Lots of families. They have a school there." Lucas arrived from the engine room, wiping grease from his hands. "What's going on? Why does everyone look like they've seen a ghost?" Helen played the message again. Lucas's expression darkened as he listened. "When was that sent?" he asked. Daniel checked the metadata attached to the transmission. His stomach dropped. 19 days ago. The command deck fell silent again. 19 days? The attack had happened over 2 weeks ago, and they were just now receiving the distress call. That meant the signal had been traveling through space all this time, growing weaker with every passing hour, until it finally reached their communications array. "We need to contact Fleet Command," Nina said. "Tell them what we heard." "Already on it," Helen said. Opening a quantum relay channel back to Earth, the message would take several hours to reach home. Even using faster-than-light communication, Daniel walked back to his command chair and sat down heavily. His mind was racing. New Haven had gone silent 3 weeks ago. He remembered seeing a notice about it in the daily bulletins, but Fleet Command had assumed it was just a communications malfunction. Equipment failed all the time in the colonies. Nobody had thought it was an emergency, but now they knew the truth. New Haven hadn't gone silent because of equipment failure. They had gone silent because someone had attacked them. "What do we do?" Lucas asked. "We're just a cargo ship. We don't have weapons. We don't have Marines." Daniel looked at the coordinates displayed on the screen. 4 days away. The message was 19 days old. That meant whatever had happened at New Haven was over. The attack had already concluded, one way or another, but there might be survivors. People who needed help. People who had been waiting for someone, anyone, to respond to their desperate call. He thought about the voice on the transmission. The fear, the pleading. "They're taking the children." Daniel made his decision. "Plot a course for New Haven," he said. "Maximum burn. We're going to investigate." Helen turned in her chair. "Daniel, we're not equipped for this." "We should wait for Fleet Command to respond." "Fleet Command is weeks away," Daniel said. "We're the closest ship to those coordinates. If there are survivors, they need help now, not in 3 weeks." "He's right," Lucas said. "We have to go." Nina nodded. "I'll prepare the medical bay for potential casualties." Helen looked at Daniel for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, changing course now. We'll arrive in 4 days, maybe less if I push the engines." "Push them," Daniel said. The horizon's edge turned smoothly in space, its engines burning brighter as Helen increased power. The old freighter accelerated toward the coordinates, toward New Haven, toward whatever horrors awaited them there. Daniel sat in his command chair and watched the stars change position on the screen. He knew they might be flying into danger. He knew they might find nothing but death and destruction. But he also knew they had to try. Somewhere out there, people might be waiting for help. And help was coming, even if it was just one old cargo ship and a crew of 4. The 4 days of travel felt like 4 years. Everyone on the horizon's edge was tense, waiting, wondering what they would find when they reached New Haven. Helen pushed the engines harder than she ever had before, shaving hours off their estimated arrival time. Lucas spent most of his time in the engine room, making sure nothing broke down under the strain. Nina prepared the medical bay obsessively, arranging supplies and equipment over and over again. Daniel knew she was trying to keep her mind busy, trying not to think about what might be waiting for them. Daniel himself spent hours reviewing every piece of information they had about New Haven. The colony had been established as a research outpost, studying alien plant and animal life on the planet's surface. 800 people lived there. Scientists, support staff, families. There was a school for 60 children, a medical center, residential domes. Everything a small community needed to thrive. The images in the colony database showed happy people working in clean laboratories, children playing in the recreation areas, families having dinner together in the common spaces. Daniel stared at those faces and wondered how many of them were still alive on the 4th day. They finally arrived at the coordinates. Helen brought them out of high speed and slowed the ship to a cautious approach. The planet appeared on their view screen, a blue and green world that looked peaceful from orbit. But as they got closer, Daniel's hopes began to die. The colony's orbital satellite was dark and tumbling, clearly damaged. Its solar panels were torn away, and part of its hull was missing. Helen tried to contact the surface using standard frequencies, but got only silence in return. "Taking us down," Helen said quietly. The horizon's edge descended through the atmosphere. And as they broke through the cloud layer, the full extent of the devastation became visible. New Haven was destroyed. The colony spread across a valley, between two mountain ranges, or at least it used to. Now it looked like a war zone. The residential domes were torn open, their transparent panels shattered and scattered across the ground. Several buildings were still burning, sending black smoke into the sky. The agricultural domes that had fed the colony were crushed. Their support structures collapsed. Helen found a clear area near what used to be the landing pad and set the ship down. The landing gear touched the ground with a gentle thump, but nobody moved. They all stared at the view screen, looking at the destruction. "I'll suit up," Daniel finally said. "Lucas, Nina, you're with me. Helen, keep the engines hot. If anything happens, you get this ship back to space immediately." "Not a chance," Helen said. "If you're going out there, I'm coming too." Daniel wanted to argue, but he knew it would be pointless. Instead, he nodded. They all went to the airlock and put on their environment suits. The planet's atmosphere was breathable, but the suits offered protection and had built-in medical monitors. The airlock opened, and they stepped out onto the surface of New Haven for the first time. The smell hit them immediately, even through the suit filters. Smoke, burning plastic, and something worse. Something organic. Death had a smell that was impossible to mistake. Daniel led them toward the colony center, moving carefully between the ruins. The ground was covered with debris. Broken furniture, shattered equipment, personal belongings scattered everywhere. A child's toy lay in the dirt, one of those stuffed animals that children loved. It was covered in dust and soot. They found the first bodies near the residential area. 3 humans lying in the street. They had been dead for weeks, their bodies preserved by the planet's cool temperature. Daniel felt his stomach turn, but he forced himself to look, to document what he was seeing. Nina knelt beside the bodies, her medical training overriding her horror. "Projectile wounds," she said, her voice shaking. "Some kind of energy weapon burns too." They died fighting. They moved deeper into the colony. More bodies. Men, women, old people. All of them showed signs of violent death. Weapons fire had scarred the walls of every building. Empty shell casings littered the ground where colonists had made their last stands, but Daniel noticed something strange. There weren't enough bodies. 800 people had lived here, but they had found maybe 30 bodies. Where were the rest? Then Lucas called out, "Over here. You need to see this." They found him standing over something that wasn't human. Daniel stared at the alien corpse, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. The creature was roughly human-sized, but built completely differently. It had 4 arms, each ending in clawed hands. Its body was covered in dark chitinous plates like an insect's exoskeleton. The head was elongated with multiple eyes arranged around a mouth full of sharp teeth. It had been killed by human weapons, the chitin shattered by multiple bullet impacts. "What is that?" Helen whispered. "I don't know," Nanya said, kneeling to examine it. "I've never seen anything like this in the xenobiology databases." They found more alien bodies as they explored. At least 20 of them scattered throughout the colony. Whatever they were, they had come in force, and the colonists had fought back hard. But it hadn't been enough. Daniel's radio crackled. "This is crossed to any survivors. If anyone can hear this transmission, please respond. We're here to help." Only static answered him. They continued searching, working their way toward the colony's central bunker. Every colony had one, a reinforced shelter designed to protect people during emergencies. If anyone had survived, they would be there. The bunker's entrance was partially collapsed. Lucas pulled tools from his pack and started clearing the debris. It took an hour of hard work, but they finally got the door open. Daniel shined his light into the darkness. "Hello? Anyone in there?" For a long moment, there was no response. Then, from deep within the bunker, a voice called out. "Weak, scared, but alive. Who's there?" "We received your distress call," Daniel shouted back. "We're from the cargo ship Horizon's Edge. We're here to help." Movement in the darkness. Shadows shifted, and then people began emerging from the bunker. They moved slowly, carefully, like they couldn't quite believe what was happening. Daniel counted them as they came out. 43 people. Adults, children, elderly. They were thin, dirty, scared. But alive, a man limped forward, his leg wrapped in crude bandages. He looked at Daniel with eyes that had seen too much horror. "You came?" the man said, his voice breaking. "We kept hoping, but we thought nobody heard us." "We heard you," Daniel said. "What happened here? Who attacked you?" The man's face hardened. "They called themselves the Krell. They came 3 weeks ago, dropped out of the sky without warning, started attacking immediately. We tried to fight back, but they had weapons we couldn't match. And they weren't trying to kill everyone." "What do you mean?" Nina asked. "They were taking people," the man said. "Loading them onto their ships? Young people mostly? Adults who could work, children." His voice cracked on the last word. "I saw them take at least 300 colonists onto their ships before we sealed the bunker. I'm Paul Edwards, colony administrator. I kept broadcasting the distress signal for 4 days until our power failed." Daniel felt rage building in his chest. Not just an attack, but kidnapping. Hundreds of people taken from their homes. Where did they take them? Daniel asked. Doc. Paul shook his head. "I don't know. They left 2 weeks ago. I tried to track their ships, but our systems were too damaged." Lucas stepped forward. "I can pull data from the colony's sensor logs. If their ships left any kind of trail, I can find it." Daniel looked at the survivors, at their faces full of hope and trauma. Then he looked up at the sky, at the stars where the Krell had disappeared. "Get me that trail," he said to Lucas. "We're going after them." The recovered data from the first Krell station changed everything. What had started as a rescue mission became a full military campaign. Admiral Christine Cole sat in her command center aboard the Defiance, studying the network map that Lieutenant Andrew Baker had pieced together. The Krell operation was massive. 47 stations spread across 5 star systems, hundreds of ships. An organization that had been operating for years, maybe decades, kidnapping sentient beings from across the galaxy and selling them to the highest bidder. Humans were valuable commodities in their network. The records showed why. Human intelligence, adaptability, and physical resilience made them desirable workers. Human hands could perform delicate tasks. Human minds could solve complex problems. And humans were durable, able to survive in harsh conditions that would kill other species. Christine felt sick reading the reports. But she also felt something else: determination. The Krell had made a fundamental miscalculation. They had looked at humanity's peaceful nature and assumed it meant weakness. They were about to learn the difference. She called a meeting of her senior staff. Commander Patricia Miles, Lieutenant Andrew Baker, Dr. Karen Wells, and Fleet Engineer Raymond Clark all gathered in the command center. "We have locations for all 47 stations," Christine said. "We have intel on their defenses, their operations, and their fleet strength. Now we need a strategy to take them all down." Raymond studied the map. "We can't hit them all at once. We don't have enough ships. But if we hit them sequentially, word will spread and they'll fortify their positions." "Then we hit them fast," Patricia said, "before they can react. Strike teams on multiple targets simultaneously, moving station to station faster than they can warn each other." Andrew highlighted several stations on the map. These 5 stations are their main processing centers. They're the largest and most heavily defended, but they're also where the majority of prisoners are held. If we can take these, we cripple their entire operation. "What about the ships?" Karen asked. "Even if we take the stations, the Krell fleet can scatter and reform elsewhere." Christine nodded. "Which is why we're not just attacking their stations. We're destroying their entire network. Every ship, every facility, every piece of their infrastructure. When we're done, the Krell slave trade won't exist anymore." Over the next week, Earth sent reinforcements. More warships, more Marines, more supplies. The fleet grew to 43 combat vessels. The Marine force doubled to 24,000 troops. Engineers brought specialized equipment for station assaults. Captain Daniel Cross and the Horizon's Edge continued serving as scouts, ranging ahead of the fleet to locate targets. Daniel had seen enough horror in the past few weeks to last a lifetime. The destroyed colonies, the traumatized survivors, the prison cells. He wanted to see this through to the end. The campaign began with surgical precision. The fleet divided into smaller task forces, each targeting a different station. They hit 6 facilities simultaneously, catching the Krell completely off guard. The pattern was the same each time. Warships would drop out of faster-than-light travel and immediately engage any Krell vessels. The space battles were one-sided. Krell ships were built for raiding civilian targets, not fighting military warships. Human weapons tore through them. Once space was secure, the Marines would board the stations. They had learned from the first assault, developing tactics specifically for station-clearing operations. They moved fast, overwhelming defenders before the Krell could organize resistance, and most importantly, they rescued prisoners. Hundreds at first, then thousands. Humans, yes, but also members of other species. The Krell didn't discriminate. If a species could be sold, they would take them. Some of the rescued humans had been missing for over a year. They told stories of being transported between stations, evaluated, prepared for sale. Some had already been sold and were waiting for transfer to their buyers. The Marines intercepted those transfers too, freeing prisoners and destroying the buyer ships. Lieutenant Sarah Cooper's squad became known as the best breach team in the fleet. They led the assault on 12 different stations, perfecting their tactics with each one. Sarah had joined the Marines to protect people, and now she was doing exactly that on a scale she never imagined. During one assault on a heavily defended station, Sarah's squad encountered something new. Krell guards were using human prisoners as shields, threatening to kill them if the Marines didn't retreat. Sarah didn't hesitate. She signaled her squad to spread out and find firing angles. Then she opened a channel to the Krell. "You have 5 seconds to release those prisoners," she said calmly. "After that, we're coming through, and we don't miss." The Krell leader chittered something in their language. Andrew Baker, monitoring from the Defiance, translated. The Krell was refusing, demanding the Marines leave the station. Sarah counted to 5. Then her squad moved. They fired with perfect precision, their shots passing within inches of the hostages and hitting the Krell guards. The prisoners dropped to the floor unharmed while the guards fell dead. "Prisoners secured," Sarah reported. "Continuing advance." Not every assault went smoothly. The Marines took casualties. Krell weapons were less advanced than human ones, but they were still deadly. Ships were damaged in the space battles. Equipment failed. People died, but they kept going. Station by station, system by system, they dismantled the Krell network. Each victory recovered more prisoners. Each battle brought them closer to their goal. Lieutenant Andrew Baker worked tirelessly in intelligence, analyzing captured data and coordinating the campaign. He discovered that the Krell slave trade extended beyond just kidnapping. They had agreements with corrupt officials on some worlds. They had middlemen who arranged sales. They had buyers across dozens of species. "This is bigger than just the Krell," Andrew reported to Christine. "There's an entire underground economy built on slave trading. Multiple species are involved." Christine's expression hardened. "Then we expand the mission. Any species involved in buying or selling sentient beings becomes a target." The fleet began intercepting buyer ships, documenting their species and homeworlds. Diplomatic teams followed up, delivering a simple message: return all enslaved individuals immediately or face military action. Most buyers complied quickly when they saw footage of what happened to the Krell stations. The campaign lasted 3 months. In that time, the fleet attacked 47 stations, destroyed over 300 Krell ships, and engaged in 6 major space battles. They traveled across 5 star systems, went places humans had never been, and faced dangers they had only trained for in simulations, but they also rescued people. Final count: 2,847 humans recovered, plus another 4,000 individuals from 11 other species. The last major target was Krell Prime, the homeworld of the Krell swarm and the center of their slave trade operation. It was the most heavily defended location in their network. Orbital platforms, defense satellites, ground-based weapons, and a fleet of over 60 warships. The Krell leadership sent a transmission as the human fleet approached. They threatened to execute all remaining prisoners if the humans attacked. They demanded the fleet withdraw and offered to negotiate the release of human prisoners over time. Admiral Christine Cole's response was broadcast across the fleet and back to Earth, so everyone could hear her words. The Krell swarm made a choice when they attacked New Haven. They chose to prey on human beings. They chose to steal our people, to sell them like property, to destroy their lives. Now they want to negotiate. But humanity doesn't negotiate with slavers. We don't bargain with kidnappers. We don't make deals with those who would harm our own. The only choice the Krell have now is to surrender completely and face justice, or to fight and face annihilation. They have 1 hour to decide. The Krell chose to fight. It was the last mistake their civilization would make as a major power, the battle for Krell. Prime was the largest military engagement humanity had fought in a century. The space battle raged for 6 hours. Human warships fought through the orbital defenses, destroying platforms and satellites. The Krell fleet fought desperately, but they were outgunned and outmaneuvered. While the space battle continued, Commander Patricia Miles led a ground assault with 5,000 Marines. They dropped directly onto the planet's surface in armored transports. Heading for the main prisoner compound, Captain Daniel Cross volunteered to join the ground assault. He had come this far, seen this much, he wanted to be there at the end. Admiral Cole approved his request and he dropped with Patricia's forces. The ground battle was fierce. Krell warriors defended their homeworld with everything they had. But the Marines were fighting for something more powerful than territory. They were fighting for their people. Every Marine had seen the footage from New Haven. Every one of them knew what was at stake. The Horizon's Edge had been following the Krell Ion Trail for 6 days when the fleet finally caught up. Daniel was in the command chair when Helen picked up the massive energy signatures on her sensors. "We've got company," she announced. "Big company." 27 warships just dropped out of faster-than-light travel about 2 million kilometers behind us. Daniel felt relief wash over him. They weren't alone anymore. The survivors from New Haven were safely aboard the Defiance's medical bay, transferred 3 days ago when the fleet made contact. Now the real work could begin. Admiral Christine Cole's face appeared on their communication screen. She looked tired but determined. "Captain Cross, I'm ordering you to fall back and let the fleet take point. With respect, Admiral, we've been tracking these trails for almost a week now," Daniel said. "My crew knows what to look for. Let us stay out front as scouts. We're small and fast, and we can go places your big warships can't." Christine studied him for a moment. "You understand you'll be in more danger out front?" "I understand," Daniel said. "But we started this. We want to finish it." Christine nodded slowly. Permission granted. "Stay in constant communication and report anything unusual immediately." The fleet moved forward in formation, with the Horizon's Edge ranging ahead like a hunting dog following a scent. They traveled for 2 more days, moving deeper into a region of space humanity had never explored. The stars here were different, and the navigation charts had blank spaces where no one had bothered to map. Lieutenant Andrew Baker sat in the intelligence section of the Defiance, analyzing every piece of data they gathered. He was young for his rank, only 28, but he had a gift for patterns and puzzles. Right now, he was trying to solve the biggest puzzle of his career. "Admiral, I think I've found something," he said, requesting her presence in the intelligence center. Christine arrived quickly. Along with Dr. Karen Wells, Andrew pulled up a star map showing their route and several other marked locations. "I've been reviewing all reports of missing colonies over the past year," he explained. "New Haven wasn't the first. There have been 3 other incidents, small outposts that went silent. We assumed equipment failures or natural disasters, but now I'm not so sure." He highlighted the locations on the map. All of them were remote, isolated colonies. All of them had similar populations to New Haven. And all of them had gone silent in the past 6 months. "You think the Krell hit them too?" Christine said. "I think we're looking at a pattern," Andrew confirmed. "The Krell have been systematically targeting isolated human settlements. Testing. Our defenses, learning our capabilities, taking our people. But why? Karen asked. What do they want with human prisoners? Andrew pulled up another file. That's what I've been trying to figure out. I've analyzed the Krell communications we intercepted from New Haven. Most of it was tactical chatter. But there were a few interesting fragments. They mentioned something called processing stations and auction schedules. Christine felt her blood run cold. They're selling them. They're selling human beings. It looks that way, Andrew said quietly. The Krell aren't the end buyers. They're middlemen. Slavers. The word hung in the air like poison. Slavery. Humanity had abolished that evil centuries ago, fought wars to end it, built their entire society on the principle that every human being had inherent worth and freedom. And now they had encountered aliens who saw humans as products to be sold. Christine's rage was cold and focused. Find out who's buying. Find out where they're selling. Find out everything. Yes, Admiral, Andrew said. 2 days later. The fleet received a priority transmission from the Horizon's edge. Daniel's voice was urgent. Admiral, we found something. You need to see this. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a region of space filled with a thick nebula. The gas clouds made sensors difficult, but they could see the massive structure hanging in the void ahead. It was a station built into an asteroid. Easily 5 kilometers across, covered in docking ports and defensive weapons. Dozens of ships were attached to it, including several with the same signature as the Krell vessels from New Haven. Scanning for life signs, one of the Defiance's officers reported. I'm picking up multiple signatures, some match Krell biology, but I'm also detecting human life signs. At least 400 of them. Christine felt her heart race. They had found them. The colonists were there on that station. Lieutenant Baker, I need everything you can tell me about that station. Defenses, layout, weak points, everything. Andrew worked frantically with his team, analyzing the sensor data. The station has defensive weapons, but they're designed to fight off other raiders, not a military fleet. The docking ports appear to be the main entry points. The structure has multiple internal sections, probably to keep different groups of captives separated. Commander Patricia Miles joined Christine on the bridge. Give me the word, Admiral. My Marines are ready. Christine studied the tactical display. They could blow the station apart from orbit, but that would kill everyone inside, including the human prisoners. No, this had to be a boarding action. Dangerous, complicated, but it was the only way. Commander, prepare your assault teams, Christine ordered. We're going in hard and fast. Primary objective is recovering the hostages. Secondary objective is capturing Krell personnel for interrogation. If they resist, put them down. Patricia smiled grimly. With pleasure, Admiral. The fleet moved into position. The warships spread out, surrounding the station and blocking any escape routes. The Krell began launching their ships, trying to flee or fight, but they were outmatched. Human railguns tore through Krell vessels with devastating accuracy. Energy weapons disabled their engines. Within minutes, half the Krell fleet was destroyed or crippled. The assault carriers moved in close. Docking tubes extended and locked onto the station's ports. Marines poured through, their weapons ready, their training taking over. Lieutenant Sarah Cooper led the first squad through the breach. She had trained for years for combat in hostile environments, but nothing quite prepared her for what they found inside. The interior of the station was dark and cold. The corridors were narrow, designed for species smaller than humans. Sarah and her squad moved carefully, checking corners. Covering each other's advance, they encountered their first Krell defenders at an intersection. The aliens opened fire with their energy weapons, but the Marines' armor absorbed most of the impact. Sarah returned fire with her rifle, and the armor-piercing rounds punched through the Krell's chitin like it was paper. The firefight was brief and brutal. The Krell were tough, but they were raiders, not soldiers. They broke and ran when they realized they were losing. Advance, Sarah ordered. Find those prisoners. Other Marine squads pushed through different sections of the station. They fought through Krell defenders, secured key areas, and worked toward the central holding area where the sensors had detected the human life signs. Sergeant Kyle Davis breached a heavy door and found himself in a large chamber filled with cells. Inside those cells were people, humans. They were dirty, scared, but alive. "We're United States Marines," Kyle announced. "We're here to get you out?" The prisoners stared at him in disbelief. Then someone started crying, then someone else. Then they were all crying and cheering and pressing against the cell bars. Kyle's team started breaking open the locks. As the prisoners emerged, medical teams moved in to provide immediate care. Some of the colonists were injured. All of them were malnourished and traumatized, but they were alive. "Is everyone from New Haven here?" Kyle asked. An older woman shook her head. "No, some of us were taken to other stations. Different destinations. They were sorting us." Kyle's jaw tightened. So there were more stations. More prisoners scattered across the galaxy. The assault continued for 3 hours. The Marines cleared the entire station, neutralizing all Krell resistance. In the end, they recovered 412 human prisoners. Among them were 84 colonists from New Haven, but they also found something else that made Christine's blood boil. In the station's computer core, Andrew Baker discovered records. Records of transactions, records of previous sales, records showing that over 3,000 humans had been processed through this station alone in the past year. And it wasn't the only station. The records showed a network. Dozens of Krell facilities scattered across this region of space. An entire infrastructure built on the slave trade, with humans as one of their most valuable commodities. Christine stood on the bridge of the Defiance, looking at the recovered prisoners being brought aboard the medical ships. They were safe now, but thousands more were still out there, waiting, hoping someone would find them. She opened a fleet-wide channel again. "All ships, this is Admiral Cole. We've won this battle, but the war isn't over. We found evidence of an extensive network. There are more of our people out there, and we're going to find every single one of them." Back on Earth, the evidence from New Haven arrived through the quantum relay and exploded across every news network within hours. Daniel had sent everything. Images of the destroyed colony, recordings of survivor testimonies, scans of the alien bodies, and data on the Krell ships. The reaction was immediate and unprecedented. Admiral Christine Cole stood in the central command room of Fleet Headquarters, watching the footage play on dozens of screens. She had served in the military for 30 years, had seen combat during the border disputes with the Mars colonies. But nothing had prepared her for this. Children being loaded onto alien ships while their parents screamed. Families torn apart. An entire colony devastated. And not by some natural disaster or accident, but by deliberate, calculated violence around her. The command center buzzed with activity. Officers rushed between stations. Communications personnel fielded calls from every government official on Earth and the colonies. Everyone wanted answers. Everyone wanted action. Christine's second-in-command, Captain Gregory Bell, approached with a datapad. "Admiral, the Defense Council has been convened. They're ready for your briefing." Christine nodded and made her way to the council chambers. The room was packed with representatives from every major nation, every colony, and every branch of the military. The usual political divisions that slowed down every decision had vanished. Everyone had seen the footage. Everyone understood what was at stake. She stood at the podium and activated the display. Images from New Haven filled the wall behind her. 3 weeks ago, New Haven Colony was attacked by an unknown alien species calling themselves the Krell, she began. 800 colonists lived there. 43 survived. Approximately 300 were taken alive and transported to an unknown location. The rest were killed during the attack. The room erupted in angry voices. Christine let them talk for a moment, then raised her hand for silence. "This wasn't a random act of violence," she continued. "Intelligence analysis suggests this was a coordinated raid with a specific purpose. The Krell targeted specific individuals, primarily young adults and children. They brought specialized equipment for capturing and transporting prisoners. This was planned. Do we know where they took our people?" asked Senator Julia Martinez from the Colonial Affairs Committee. Not yet, Christine admitted. But we have a lead. The cargo ship that discovered the attack is currently tracking the Krell's ion trail. Captain Daniel Cross and his crew are transmitting coordinates as they follow the trail deeper into unexplored space. A cargo ship? Someone asked incredulously. One civilian cargo ship is tracking these aliens? Captain Cross and his crew are doing what they can with what they have, Christine said firmly. But they need support. Which brings me to the purpose of this council. I'm requesting full authorization to mobilize the fleet and pursue the Krell. We need to find our people and bring them home. The vote took less than 5 minutes. It was unanimous. Within hours, Christine had her authorization and unlimited resources. She immediately contacted Fleet Engineer Raymond Clark, a gruff man in his 50s who could build or fix anything. Raymond, I need every combat-capable ship ready to fly within 72 hours, she told him. Raymond whistled. That's asking for a miracle, Admiral. Then work a miracle, Christine said. Those people don't have time for us to take our time. Raymond nodded. You'll have your ships? Next, Christine met with Commander Patricia Miles, head of the Marine Corps. Patricia was a hard woman, scarred from years of combat training, but her eyes showed the same fury Christine felt. How many Marines can you mobilize? Christine asked. 12,000, fully equipped and ready for combat operations, Patricia said without hesitation. We've been training for hostile contact scenarios. Time to see if that training was worth it. The Intelligence Division worked around the clock analyzing the data from New Haven. Director Vincent Shaw, a thin man with sharp eyes, pulled every detail from the evidence. He studied the Krell bodies, their weapons, their ship signatures, everything. They're not explorers or merchants, Vincent reported to Christine. Everything about them is designed for combat and capture. Their ships have holding cells, not cargo bays. Their weapons are built to incapacitate, not kill. They're hunters. Hunters looking for what? Christine asked. That's what worries me, Vincent said. Why target humans specifically? Why take them alive? There's a reason, and we need to figure out what it is before we catch up to them. In the shipyards orbiting Earth, Raymond and his teams worked with desperate speed. Warships that had been in maintenance were rushed back to operational status. Weapon systems were tested and loaded. Supply ships were packed with everything an extended military campaign would need. Dr. Karen Wells, the fleet's lead scientist, examined the alien technology recovered from New Haven. The Krell weapons used energy beams that paralyzed targets. Their armor was lightweight but incredibly strong. Their ships used propulsion systems humanity didn't fully understand. We're not dealing with primitives, Karen told Christine. The Krell have technology comparable to ours, maybe even more advanced in some areas. This won't be an easy fight. I don't care if it's easy, Christine said. I care if it's possible. It's possible, Karen confirmed. But we need to be smart about it. Meanwhile, across Earth and the colonies, the news of New Haven sparked something that humanity hadn't felt in generations. Unity, purpose, rage. People gathered in the streets, holding vigils for the lost colonists. They watched the news broadcasts showing the destroyed colony and they demanded action. Not just military action, but a statement. A line in the sand. A message to the universe that humanity would not be prey. Political leaders from every nation made speeches. The sentiment was universal. Humanity had spent a century building a peaceful, prosperous civilization among the stars. They had avoided war, sought cooperation with any alien species they encountered, and focused on exploration and science, but someone had mistaken that peace for weakness. The Krell had looked at humanity's peaceful nature and seen easy targets. They had attacked human civilians, killed human families, and stolen human children. That was a mistake they would not survive. 72 hours after receiving authorization, Admiral Christine Cole stood on the bridge of her flagship, the carrier Defiance. Around her, 26 more warships hung in space. Their crews ready, their weapons armed. 12,000 Marines waited in the troop carriers. checking their equipment, reviewing their training, preparing for whatever came next. Christine opened a fleet-wide channel. Her voice carried to every ship, every sailor, every marine. 3 weeks ago, our people were attacked. They were killed and they were taken from their homes. For 3 weeks, they've been waiting, hoping, praying that someone would come for them. Today we answer that prayer. We're going into unknown space to face an unknown enemy. Some of you will not come back. But everyone we do bring back, every colonist we rescue, every child we return to their family, that's why we wear this uniform. That's why we serve. The Krell made a choice when they attacked New Haven. They chose to make an enemy of humanity. Now we're going to show them what that means. The fleet moved out, following the coordinates that Daniel's cargo ship had been sending. They jumped to faster-than-light speed, racing across the galaxy toward whatever waited for them on the bridge of the Defiance. Christine stared at the star map showing their route. They were going farther from Earth than any human military force had ever traveled. Into darkness, into danger, but they were also going toward their people. And they would not stop until every last human was brought home. The Marines fought through 3 miles of fortified Krell positions to reach the main compound. Buildings collapsed under artillery fire. Defensive walls crumbled. The Krell threw everything they had at the human forces, but it wasn't enough. Lieutenant Sarah Cooper led her squad through the outer defenses, clearing bunkers and neutralizing weapon emplacements. Her armor was scorched from energy weapon impacts and her rifle was running low on ammunition, but she didn't slow down. Somewhere ahead were the prisoners. That was all that mattered. Captain Daniel Cross stayed close to Commander Patricia Miles, fighting alongside the Marines even though he had minimal combat training. He had lost count of how many times someone had saved his life in the past hour. His hands shook as he fired his weapon, but he kept going forward. The compound walls loomed ahead, tall and imposing. Krell defenders lined the top, firing down at the advancing Marines. Engineers brought up heavy breaching equipment, and explosives blasted a hole through the wall. Marines poured through the gap, and the real fighting began, inside the compound. The battle turned brutal and close quarters. Corridors filled with smoke and the sound of weapons fire. Krell guards fought desperately, knowing this was their last stand. Marines pushed forward methodically, clearing room by room. Sarah's squad reached a massive chamber filled with cells. Hundreds of them, stacked 3 levels high. And inside those cells were people. Humans and others all pressed against the bars, watching the battle with desperate hope. "Get these cells open," Sarah ordered. Her squad's engineer worked on the control system. While the rest maintained a defensive perimeter, the cells began opening. Prisoners emerged slowly at first, then in a flood. They were thin and scared, but alive. Medical teams rushed in, triaging the worst cases and guiding others to safety. Daniel moved through the crowd, looking at faces. So many people who had been taken from their homes, who had survived against all odds. Then he saw someone he recognized. Paul Edwards, the colony administrator from New Haven, the man who had kept broadcasting the distress signal for 4 days. Paul stared at Daniel in shock. "You came back. I told you we would," Daniel said. "Time to go home." The battle for the compound continued for another hour, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Marines were relentless, pushing through every defense, clearing every room. The Krell leadership tried to escape but found their ships destroyed by orbital fire when the shooting finally stopped. Commander Patricia Miles stood in the compound's central plaza and raised the flag of United Earth. Marines cheered. Prisoners cried. It was over. In orbit, Admiral Christine Cole received the report from the surface. All prisoners recovered. All objectives secured. The Krell leadership was in custody. The slave trade network was broken. She opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, mission accomplished. Well done. Let's bring our people home. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks. The fleet moved slowly, accommodating the transport ships carrying recovered prisoners. Medical teams worked around the clock, treating injuries both physical and psychological. Counselors helped people process the trauma they had. Experienced. Daniel spent time talking with survivors from New Haven. They told him about the weeks in captivity, the fear, the uncertainty. But they also told him about the hope they felt when they heard the sound of human weapons fire. The moment they knew someone had come for them. "We never stopped believing," one mother told him, holding her young daughter. "We knew humanity wouldn't abandon us." The fleet arrived at Earth to a celebration unlike anything in human history. Every nation, every colony, every settlement watched as the ships came home. Families reunited with loved ones they thought were lost forever. Children saw their parents again. People who had been missing for a year stepped back onto Earth's soil. Merle Christine Cole addressed the assembled crowd at the main landing facility. Behind her stood recovered colonists, Marines who had fought in the campaign, and representatives from the other species they had rescued. 3 months ago, we received a distress call from New Haven, she began. Today, we return with nearly 3,000 humans who were taken from their homes. But this campaign was about more than just rescue. It was about sending a message to the galaxy. She paused, looking out at the faces before her. Humanity has spent generations building a peaceful civilization. We've sought cooperation, understanding, and friendship with every species we've encountered. We will continue to be a peaceful people. But peace must never be confused with weakness. The Krell swarm learned that lesson the hard way. They saw our peaceful nature and assumed they could prey on us without consequence. They were wrong. Any species in this galaxy that threatens human life, that attacks human civilians, that would enslave human beings, will face the same response. We will find you. We will free our people. And we will ensure you never threaten anyone again. The crowd erupted in cheers. Christine let them celebrate for a moment, then continued. But we also learned something during this campaign. The slave trade wasn't just the Krell, it was a network spanning multiple species and systems. We've dismantled one network, but others may exist. So I'm announcing the formation of a new division within the Unified Fleet, the Liberation Corps. Their mission will be to locate and free enslaved individuals of any species, anywhere in the galaxy. More cheers. Christine smiled slightly. We didn't ask for this fight. But now that we've fought it, we've discovered something about ourselves. Humanity has the power to protect not just our own, but others who cannot protect themselves. We have the strength to stand against tyranny and oppression wherever we find it. And we have the will to see it through, no matter the cost. She gestured to the Marines standing at attention behind her. These men and women proved that over 3 months of continuous operations, they fought in space and on the ground. They faced unknown dangers and impossible odds, and they never stopped until every last prisoner was freed. They are heroes in the truest sense of the word. The celebration continued for days. Nations held parades. Children wrote letters to the Marines who had fought in the campaign. Artists created memorials to those who had died. The campaign became known simply as the Liberation, and it changed how humanity saw itself. Captain Daniel Cross and his crew returned to their cargo ship, but their lives had changed forever. The Horizon's Edge was given a formal commendation and permanent recognition in the fleet's history. Daniel was offered a commission as a Navy officer, but he declined. He preferred his old job, hauling cargo between the stars, but now, wherever he went, people knew the Horizon's Edge. They knew it was the ship that had heard the distress call. The ship that had started everything. Daniel would walk through space stations and colony ports, and people would approach him to shake his hand or simply say thank you. Lieutenant Sarah Cooper received a promotion and command of her own Marine company. She continued serving with the Liberation Corps, participating in 6 more rescue operations over the following year. Each time she thought about that first mission to New Haven, the moment that had changed everything. Lieutenant Andrew Baker became the head of the fleet's intelligence division. He spent his time analyzing data from across the galaxy, looking for signs of slave trading or other threats to human safety. He built a network of informants and contacts, ensuring that humanity would never be caught off guard again. The Krell swarm faced judgment for their crimes. Their leadership was tried in an international court, found guilty of crimes against sentient beings, and imprisoned. Their civilization was placed under monitoring, their military capabilities restricted. They would spend generations recovering from their defeat and rebuilding under the watchful eye of human observers. As for the rescued colonists from New Haven, they faced a difficult choice. Their home was destroyed, their colony wiped out. Some chose to settle on other worlds, starting new lives in established communities. Others decided to rebuild New Haven to reclaim what had been taken from them. Paul Edwards led the rebuilding effort. With support from Earth, they cleared the ruins, constructed new facilities, and brought life back to the colony. It took 2 years, but New Haven rose again. And this time, it had a defense force and a direct communication link to the fleet. One evening, 5 years after the attack, Paul stood on the edge of New Haven and looked up at the stars. The colony was thriving again. Children played in the streets. People worked in the laboratories. Life had returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after such trauma. He thought about that terrible day when the Krell had attacked. The fear, the death, the desperation. He thought about the 4 days he had spent broadcasting the distress signal, not knowing if anyone would ever hear it, but someone had heard. Daniel Cross and his crew, thousands of light years away, had picked up that signal. And they had come? And because they had come, thousands of people were alive today who otherwise would have died in slavery. Paul smiled and went back inside. He had work to do. The colony needed him. And tomorrow he would wake up and continue living, continue thriving, continue proving that humanity could not be broken. Across the galaxy, on dozens of worlds, former prisoners were doing the same thing. Rebuilding their lives, healing from their trauma, moving forward. They would never forget what had happened.